The purpose of this lesson is to show how you can use a computer program to see a graphic representation of tone. You'll be able to compare the graphic representation of a native Thai speaker's tone with your own tone to see if you're doing it right. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about how Thai uses orthographic symbols to represent tone, and we're going to use one example from a middle-class consonant. And then we're going to use a computer program called Praat. And what Praat allows us to do is see a visual representation of sound. And what we're looking at is the change in pitch over time, because what tone is a change in pitch. After that, we're going to record our own tones using Praat, and then compare our tones to the native Thai speakers. The top row of this table shows the name of the tone mark in Thai. The next row is the symbol that is used, and this dotted circle represents the place a vowel or a consonant would hold. This row shows the English names for the 5 different tones of Thai. And what tone is a change in pitch over time, which is represented by this graph. And the colors of the names of the tones correspond with these pitch contour lines. And when we analyze our native speaker's pronunciation in Praat, we will see that the pitch of her pronunciation of these syllables has these same shapes. But one thing to keep in mind is that the shapes won't always be exactly matching these lines. These lines are generalizations, and any individual pronunciation will have a slight variation. So we're going to look at general patterns. The final row is the Thai orthographic representation of a middle-class consonant long vowel plus a tone symbol. So now let's analyze some of these tones in Praat. I'm going to start by opening Praat, and I'm going to open sound files. And I have sound file examples of 2 different consonants, gawk gai and dot dao. So let's import all 10. Now let's view the first sound file. It's gawk gai plus a long vowel, ah. You can hear the sound file by double-clicking down here.
Ga.
And this blue line represents the speaker's pitch contour. And as you can see, it remains flat and then drops off at the end. And if we compare that to our graph of pitch contours, it follows the same pattern of this midline, because it's a midtone. Next, let's look at the low tone.
Ga.
This is the low tone, and the pitch drops rapidly. Let's compare that to our pitch contour graph. This line represents the low tone, and we see the same pattern, this rapid drop. Next, let's look at the falling tone.
Ga.
So what's clear from this graph is this smooth and slow drop off in the pitch level. What's not represented very well in this example is the tone starting from a lower pitch, moving higher, and then dropping off, which is what we see in this graph of the falling tone, with the pitch starting a little bit lower, rising, and then gradually dropping off. Because that pattern wasn't well represented in that sample, I want to show you another sample where it is well represented. So let's look at dot dao with my toe. It's a good example. Here we see the pitch contour following that line we saw in the graph. It starts a little bit lower, rises, and then smoothly drops off. Just like this graph, it starts a little bit lower, rises, and then smoothly drops off. Next, let's look at the high tone.
Ga.
So as you can see from this pitch contour, it starts with a lower pitch and rises. That corresponds with this graphical representation of the pitch, which starts lower and rises. Last, let's look at the rising tone.
Ga.
So the pitch starts here in the middle, drops down in this parabolic shape, and then rises at the end. But if you listen to the recording, you'll hear some vocal fry. I think that's why the pitch contour line is not represented here. So let's listen to that again so you can see what I'm talking about.
Ga.
This example of thought thou plus the rising tone gives a more clear pitch contour line.
Da.
Here you can see that nice, smooth, parabolic sweep. And that's the same pitch contour line that we see here, this yellow line, this rising tone line. So now let's see if we can pronounce these tones with the same pitch contours as a native speaker. So Praat has an option to record your own sound, and to do that, you go to New, Record Mono Sound. And for this first sound, let's try to match the native speaker's midtone. So let's listen to it first.
Ga.
And now make our own recording. Ga. And let's call it mid, because it's the midtone. And now let's look at it. So it looks like my pronunciation follows a very similar pitch contour to the native speakers.
Ga.
It has this flat line through the middle, and then at the end it drops off. And mine follows that same pattern. Let's try the low tone. First, let's look at the native speakers.
Ga.
And now let's make our own. Ga. And let's name it low. And look at it. And the native speakers.
Ga.
And it looks like I produced that tone correctly too, because my pitch contour follows that same pattern down sloping as the native speakers. Now let's try the falling tone. And I found the falling tone pronunciation for the native speakers, thought thou consonant, gave us a better spectrogram. So let's look at that one.
Da.
Okay, and now let's make our own. Da. So here, although it looks like my pitch contour generally follows the shape of the native, it starts lower, it rises, and then falls off. It's not that smooth arc that we're seeing over here on the right. So I'm going to try again.
Da.
Da. Okay, so this one looks like it matches closer to the native speakers. And now I know that that one was a little bit difficult for me, so I need to be aware of that and practice that one more and listen to native speakers say their falling tone more too. Now let's look at the high tone. Here's the native speaker.
Da.
Now let's try for ourselves. Da. So here you can see my pitch contour line slowly increases, just like the native speakers. And last, the rising tone. Let's listen to the native speaker.
Da.
Da. So here my rising tone. Da. has that same parabolic scoop as the native speaker's rising tone.
打
So now you know how to use Praat to record yourself and how to compare your tones to a native Thai's and how to adjust your tone to sound more native. And I recommend experimenting with some of the different sound files that I provide and really getting an intuitive understanding of the sound of the tone and the contour of the pitch. And that way you can develop your own tones.